Hello everyone and welcome back to this channel. Today we're taking a look at another cast game, and we got here on the west side of the map we have Vindian playing as Hausa, and here on the east side of the map we got Choo Choo 4316 playing as the Russians. Very specific name there. I got this recording sent to me by Vindian, and we're gonna check it out and see if anything interesting happens. So, starting here with a wood treasure for the Russian player, 25 wood is always really nice. Vindian opting to actually go do some exploring right away, and he has actually spotted this really nice XP treasure. Now, this is gonna be really nice because it means he will actually get his 3 villagers a lot quicker, which is always nice as Hausa. Meanwhile, plopping down that granary, and I bet we'll see him selling for the wood as soon as he hits 150. And there it is, 150, and it's actually keep going a bit, but yeah, I think we'll see it any second. Also getting the treasure in there, so he's actually gonna have a shipment already, so ideally he wants to get the house up pretty quickly just so he doesn't get pop capped. And there he goes, he sends the 3 villagers. So looking at this deck, we got the 3 villagers, we actually got Polacco code. This is quite an interesting card actually, quite like eco-focused and not very influence-focused, instead of the Hausa Kingdom. Now a lot of people like to use the Palace of Mina instead because it's safer, as you will always get it in time. Sometimes you don't have the XP for the Hausa Kingdom builder. And otherwise it looks quite standard. We do have the Yoruba allies here in H2. Some people like to have them. Personally, I don't use them a whole lot. And we also have the Berbers here in H3. Now, this card is pretty interesting because if you're going to use this card, you kind of want to lean into a lot of trading posts. So we'll see if he does that. And he also got this card, which is quite an interesting card. It ships a number of Raiders and Vindians, and it actually makes their upgrades even cheaper. Which is really nice. So if you want to focus on Vindians, like let's say you send the 5 Vindian and then send this card, you actually got quite a lot of Vindians and you will have them all upgraded. Meanwhile, we can see he's just scouting the map, and he doesn't actually see, oh, he does actually see that this treasure is being taken by the Russian players. So I wonder if we're gonna see, yeah, here's the sneaky explorer going up here, and oh, but the Russian player will definitely see this. Will he get it? Do the shoot? Yeah. He took the last shot and got the XP for the treasure, and that's just so nice. And yeah, now he got more HP as well. So if you wanted to, he could probably even go into melee here and just kill, or at least chase the Russian explorer back to the base. But he's opting to do the ranged attack instead, which require a bit more micro and doesn't snare. Meanwhile, he actually already has his second card in. That's just a really fast second card. He got some great XP there. And might see Polacco code being sent, I don't know. Meanwhile, he's aging up with Moroccans, so that's the XP age up. And he's doing the hardened access, of course, which is quite standard as well. And as you can see, he's putting most vills on wood, but also some on coin actually. And he does look like he's saving that shipment actually. So he's probably gonna send Palace of Mina or go for some early pressure here. Meanwhile, we see the Russian player quite a eco-focused deck actually, with silversmith and sustainable agriculture, as well as spice trade. So this is actually really greedy and can actually get some really good eco here in H2. And I think this to some extent says that he wants to stay in H2 for a while, because there wouldn't be much of a point sending these cards if you're gonna age up to H3 where you have these better eco cards. Like refrigeration, but possibly it could be a very focused here on eco and just spamming out units H2. He's also actually sending the economic theory, so it's actually quite similar to the Polacco code, but the Russian equivalent. And we do see him actually going for a TP here and also bringing some villagers forward. So he doesn't really have a lot of army shipments here, but he does have the crates. So and also of course the streetlets and the Cossacks. So I would definitely be a bit afraid of some early pressure. And Vindian hasn't scouted the blockhouse yet, so ideally you want to go around with your explorer, look here in the middle while the Russian opponent is aging. Meanwhile, the explorer is not doing a lot here. There we see the moss coming up, and also a safe in-base war camp. And it will be interesting to see what it actually sends. Yeah, so as I presumed, he actually went for the Palace of Amina. And this card is actually quite a nice card because of the fact that it gives you those 300 tokens of influence as well as that Palace builder. However, if you compare it to the Hausa builder, you will get that faster, so you would have gotten it exactly the second they aged up, and it would have also gotten a TP that could start generating resources. But it's a trade-off, and it depends on what you like, and it also depends on what you want to use the influence for. Maybe he needs that 300 influence right away and wants to utilize it to build army units or something. But at the same time, we don't see a native site here, so he's probably not gonna spend them on natives, and there's not a whole lot of other stuff to spend them on in H1. But there comes the Palace Wagon. Now, the really scary thing about this is that if Russia is really on the ball, they can actually siege this Palace of Mina builder down before you even get it up. But this Russian player does seem to be a bit slow here on the initial attack. Maybe he's focusing a bit more on the eco side of it. So therefore, that palace will actually go up. Meanwhile, we can see Vindian here taking this hunt here, which is actually quite a exposed hunt. Maybe you want to place like a granary here and just start shooting them back. But for now, it will probably be fine. He's also training some Fulani, and he actually has another shipment now. He sent the wood, so he's gathering that wood up now. He actually has a ton of wood, but he needs to drop down some more houses, and there we go. And going for Fulani is always really nice against Russia, because Russia's army composition tends to be a lot of musk, and then pair that with streetlets, which are both countered, of course, by the archers. Now, the streetlets are only soft countered, but because of the nice range on the archers, it's just a really nice counter. Meanwhile, we actually see here some Akan coming out from this repo, so I really missed when he built this. And he's also trying to do some raiding here, and I really like this play actually. The Akans are just a great native TP, and yeah, these guys are actually quite nice stats, and he can do some real damage here if he gets in here. And also that's like the power of going with the Palace of Mina. You got the 300 tokens of influence, which is basically like 3 Akans extra. Meanwhile, we see the Russian player here defending with some musketeers, but he's being idled here, which is really nice. So I think Vindian just wanna probably just keep poking in and out here, try to get some villagers, and try just to idle the opponent. That's always really good, and it's often overlooked. Meanwhile, he's trying to siege this CP, but that's not gonna work. The archers have terrible siege, and yeah, it's in range of this blockhouse. Now we also see the Gananchi card being sent, so it's gonna enable him to start training those Akan units. And meanwhile, he's also gathering up influence, so I think, yeah, he sent the 700 influence as well, so it's gonna be interesting to see what he spends that influence on. I presume he's gonna actually want to build more Akans till he got that 12 pop, and I think when you build them from this native site, they don't actually cost any population space, which is actually just really nice, because it means you can have quite a nice mass of those Akans. But now we got some Russian Ruskets coming in here, and 120 HP, 18 range attack, meanwhile 170 HP, 19 attack. So the Akan are actually a lot stronger, but now they got the reinforcing streetlet, so yeah, they're not gonna be able to contest with that. Now, there's a bit of a slow progression here. There's not a lot of pressure from the Russian player, and I think this is a mistake, because Hausa can definitely, like, if you give Hausa time, they will definitely benefit from it, especially considering that they don't have Minutemen, and they can be really susceptible to those really early attacks. But there we see a stable coming up, and he's actually training some cavalry, so Vindian is moving back with the archers because, well, you don't want to face these cavalry units. Meanwhile, he's gaining more idle time, and I think he actually even got a will kill there, actually. It sounded like it. But yeah, now he's gonna be caught by the cavalry here, but if he just goes into melee, he could actually do like a pretty decent trade here. So, oh, make sure to go to melee. Oh, yeah, those guys are gonna done for. Meanwhile, we got the Akans here in base, and we're actually aging up now. So he gathered all the resources, he didn't send the chest of coin, and I presume he's actually gonna save this shipment, probably get some really nice shipment once he ages up. Perhaps actually this shipment would be really nice, or maybe the Emir of Kano that grants you a second Emir and also some powerful bodyguards, and those are of course the Magadai, which are some really nice musketeer type units which only have multiplayer against mercenary units. Meanwhile, it's actually sent the Berber Camels, so we did use that shipment. The Berber Camels are actually quite a nice unit. They're being nerfed in the next patch because, well, as it stood at this point, they were just really good, and they're really hard to counter because skirms that normally counter these light cavalry worked really bad against camel riders because they could just go into melee. But meanwhile, you see Vindian still has quite a nice force, so we can actually push back the Russian player. However, the Russian player is not really doing a lot with his army. It feels like his army is just moving about. He's being all over the place, and I think he needs to focus all those units on the same place and preferably attack up here where the hounds are. But now we see the cavalry coming in here, but yeah, the Berbers just popped, so this could be a really nice fight for Vindian if he gets the camels into this fight. But he's actually walking in the wrong direction, and yeah, there he sees it. So I think it's still gonna be an okay fight, but he's definitely gonna lose a few vills. Yeah, it looks like he's actually gonna lose 3 vills, so that was really unfortunate. I think if he would have been a bit more on the ball, perhaps he could have saved those villagers actually. But meanwhile, he just get a lot of those cavalry units, and that means that the Russian player doesn't really have an answer for these Fulanis, because he needed to survive with those cavalry units. Meanwhile, Vindian is losing this TP, and that's the difficult thing, like, as we said earlier with the air Berbers, like, you want to control a lot of TPs, but it can be quite difficult, especially against Russia, who is a civ that's so focused on pressure. But I do like the play with the camel riders, because the camel riders pretty much counters everything in here pretty well. They're actually like a goon type unit that is in melee, so it does counter the cavalry really well. But the thing is, they're so strong that they can definitely hold up their own, even against skirmishers, which is kind of busted. So they have like 375 HP and 27 attack, so that's just a huge attack in hit points for a goon type unit. And meanwhile, he has those really nice accounts with also shadow techs, so yeah, they're just a lot stronger at this point. And we're gonna see the token of 1000 influence being sent now, and I bet we're gonna see some, perhaps some cannon production. Meanwhile, the Russian player is trying to do some raiding, and I like that he's trying to do some raiding, but he's just backing out way too late, and he's losing way too many units. He needs to just drop in, start attacking the villas, and as soon as he sees the army, he needs to back off, because he needs those cavalry units to survive if he wants to actually beat these Fulani archers. And there we have it. We have the Falconet coming on its way, and also training some more accounts, and now actually adding in some graffiti as well. Meanwhile, if you take a look at the Russian player, he does have quite a nice bit of map control, and he's actually sent the spice trade, so that's 20% bonus to hunted animals, and I presume he also have the hunting dog, so he probably has quite a nice gather rate here. Yeah, 1.34, that's really nice, and probably a lot more than Vindian. Yeah, so he's about 30% faster gathering rate, and he's on 34 vills, and compare that to Vindian's 23. So Russia is definitely still in this game, and his score is actually looking quite healthy for Russia, for playing Russia, and he's aging up now as well. So he decided to age up with the town center, which is a good choice because he's not being pressured, but he needs to find a way to deal with these 3 falconets. And how it's gonna do it, I guess we'll probably see the 2 falconets being shipped as soon as possible. But what is this? Oh, that was really interesting. Like, Vindian walked way too far with those falconets, and he could have been sniped if he wasn't careful. Meanwhile, we see a artillery foundry here going up, and now Russia pretty much has the macro for queuing Culverin, and that's exactly what it's gonna do. And it's also getting the veteran upgrades both for the streetlets and for the ruskets. So that's just really good, and he just wants to stay back. He just wants to avoid fighting right now. But at the same time, the cavalry mass for Vindian is looking quite healthy, and he doesn't really have a lot of anti-cab. Like, these muskets are really weak muskets, and there's not a whole lot of them. There's only 17 muskets, and if you compare that to Vindian's mass here, he actually has quite a lot of stuff. But he's moving in now, he's deciding it's go time. I think it's a bit too early because he doesn't have the cannon yet. He needs to survive with as much as of his mass as possible, and I don't think he has enough anti-cab. But we'll see. I would actually prefer putting out these cannons here on the top side, and then he would have been able to already snipe one of the Falcons, but yeah, that works too, and he's actually probably gonna get at least 2 of these cannons. Yeah, and Vindian doesn't actually move back the cannons, so we'll actually get all 3, which is really nice. But at the same time, his army is just a lot weaker than Vindian's army at this point, and he doesn't have enough anti-cav. He also really needed his cav to survive. Imagine having those like 10 Cossacks just helping here in the background, trying to take the Fulani archers out. Would have made a huge difference, and also trying to get some cavalry archers to deal with these really tanky Vindianites. And at this point, it's looking really good for Vindian. He didn't lose a lot of mass, and he just has great scaling behind this double racks training these Akan units. So yeah, it's looking great, and he's moving out on the map, trying to get some more hunts. And I think he survived long enough in his base to actually be able to push before he needed those resources far out, which was really nice. And he's actually getting also the 5 Graffiti Knights, so that's going to be a huge boost to his attack as well. And we can see the Russian player actually has one Culverin here, still survived, but yeah, it's not really gonna do much because, well, Vindian's probably not gonna add any cannons at this point. It wouldn't really be wise. Also, he's probably want to save that influence to get some really nice shipment, like the 5 Center Horsemen or the 8 Berber Camel Riders. Meanwhile, we see the reinforcing Graffiti Knights here, and these guys are just really tanky. 430 hit points, 28 attack. But interestingly, as you can see, their attack is pretty much the same as the Berber Camel, which is kind of crazy, because considering the fact that the Berber Camel has a 2 times multiplier against cavalry, and that really shows the strength of the Berber Camel, and why because of its high base damage, it can really do some damage against streetlets. And at this point, the Russian player is just trying to stay back, trying to remass. He's building a lot of skirmishers, Ruskets, and that's probably actually what he needs, because he still needs some way to deal with these Graffiti Knights, but he also needs a lot of skirmishers to deal with these accounts. And the accounts are just really good against Russia, because Russia's units are just really weak, which means that they really get taken down by this area of effect damage. Meanwhile, he's trying to build a TP, it looks like here. I don't really know why, it doesn't really seem likely that will go up, but at the same time he is on 2 TCs, but yeah, he's just lost a lot of eco. But he's on 47 villagers, and they actually got a 3rd TC up here, okay, so it's actually looking quite helpful on the eco side. He still has more villagers than Hausa. Hausa 38, but at the same time, Hausa has that livestock market, and also Hausa has been completely unidled for this whole time. And we also see Vindian just doubling down here on the influence gathering buildings, plopping down a 2nd university. And this is something that a lot of Hausa players really overlook. Like, as soon as the game progresses, like beyond the first 12 minutes, you definitely want to be looking at adding some more universities, because they're gonna pay off really quickly. You're gonna be able to send in these really nice shipments, like the one he just sent for 1,000 influence, which made the upgrades for Graffiti Knights cheaper, and also sent 3 Graffiti Knights and 4 Raiders. Now, I would like to see the Raiders and Grafitis being used here, maybe try to go and raid, look at the different side. There's a lot of exposed villagers here, up here as well. And the thing is, these streetlets are not going to be able to do much. And none of the units in this composition actually counters a heavy cav from range. So Vindian can just run around with his cavalry. Like, as long as the Russian player don't add cavalry archers, you can just raid him forever, because he's not going to be able to do a thing about it. But he does have the falconets now, and I bet that we're going to see Vindian actually countering those falconets with the cavalry, because yeah, there's just not enough anti-cav here, so I think that will actually work pretty well in this composition. Now, you could also, of course, add some culverins of your own, but it's quite expensive to add culverins as Hausa, so preferably if you can get the cannons down with the cavalry, that's always nicer. And we're gonna see a big attack breaking out here. This is actually quite nice positioning here with the forest, trying to protect the cannons, and he's trying to body block with the with his units here, and the cavalry is actually missing the falconets, but at the same time he's leaving the falconet exposed on this side. And you can actually see Vindian using the formations here to spread the units apart, take less damage, and yeah, there's just way too many units for Hausa here for Russia to deal with. And once again, we're looking at a fight really in favor of Hausa here. And meanwhile, we're sending the streetlets here, so 19 reinforcement streetlets, but it's just not gonna be enough. He doesn't have enough anti-cav, and that's really the danger going up against Hausa. You really need enough anti-cav, because you know that the Lefidi is probably what they're gonna add in H3. It's one of their strongest units, and especially that spike going up in H3, sending the 5 Lefidi and then sending the 4 as well, or in this case the shipment that he had with the this card right here with the Lefidis. So yeah, now it's just looking really bad. It's losing a lot of bills, and at this point I would say the game is definitely over. So interestingly, he didn't really send a lot of those eco cards, so I wonder if he pivoted or if his strategy was all along to only have them as the safeguard. But I definitely think Russia could have sent more greedy cards here and just gotten an insane eco and just trying to get a huge mass, but because he didn't really ever get a bigger mass than Hausa, he just really struggled. And once again, no anti-cav here in sight, and he gets the halbs out, but it's just a bit too little too late, and also they're kind of on the Akans, which is not really what you want as well. So we're just gonna skip forward here because there's not a lot of things happening at this point. And we see some raids over here as well, but yeah, the Russia player is just completely pinned down. And also that's some salt here from Choo Choo. And this kind of what happens, like sometimes it can be a bit difficult going up against Hausa because you don't really know exactly why you're losing fights, but that's why it's so important to know your counters. Like a lot of people going up against Hausa will not know that the Akan is a musket, for instance. They will not know that the Akan has area effect damage, so that you should use the formations. Or they might not know how the Berber camels work, that they're actually anti-cav and so on. So it's really important to know your counters, and as Russia, you really need to build up that mass. So if we take a look at the post game, let's check at the timeline and go to the military unit population here. And as you can see, as Russia, you want to have a huge lead in population here. Like if you're fighting with a military unit population that's the same as your opponent, then you've already lost the game. As you can see, the value of the Russian units is just way less. But it would be really interesting to see the villager count. So Russia lost quite a few villas here, but it's actually quite ahead on villagers because he actually managed to raid quite a few as well. And let's take a look at the resource graph here. So Vindian is actually outgathering Russia, even with all those upgrades, and that is partially because the influence is also included in this graph. But then also he didn't get idle, and thirdly, he has those cattle that he can sell. And you can see those jumps here. That's when he sells the cattle, and it just helps boost him a bit forward. So that was that game, and I hope you liked this game. It was a really nice kill to death ratio here by Vindian, and I think a really good example on how you can counter Russia. Now you want to be careful for that first at the initial attack. Like going Palace of Mina can be quite greedy against Russia. You might not actually get the palace up in time, and on a map like this where you got the XP treasure early on, you can definitely go for the Hausa Kingdom builder. But at the same time, if you don't get an XP treasure, maybe you don't get any good treasures at all, then it's quite hard, of course, to get the Hausa Kingdom in time. But anyways, nice composition, nice gameplay, and thank you, Vindian, for sending me this recording, and I hope I see you guys in the next video.